Lolwe, they are talking of Hama, they are talking of Siro, and another one also called Sigulu, which is in Busia County. Remember, there has also been controversy between Kenya and Uganda over the controversial Migingo Island in Migori, which is yet to be resolved. So there is a lot of tension here and anxiety. A lot of, as you can see behind me, the beach, Nambo Beach, is peppered with fishermen boats. They have decided to down their tools today. They fear taking into the dicey waters. And so there's a lot of anxiety here. We're waiting for the outcome of that particular meeting and see if these 3 administration policemen will be freed. Done.
Thank you very much, Oko Kusa, for that detailed explanation. Much as not too much information is out there, but we're looking forward to getting more from you as we go along with the broadcast and the bulletins in the course of the day. Now, in studio, we also have Sean Kadovilis, who's here to bring to us the latest in the sports news, coming just 2 days before the World Cup. Sean, what should we expect today?
Yeah, it's all about the World Cup. Just 2 days, as you mentioned, 32 matches live on NTV, and it all gets underway on Thursday. The host Russia against Saudi Arabia. Of course, you'll be able to catch it right here on NTV, live and free. So the countries have been arriving in Russia. We've seen, in fact, you'll see pictures, Argentina, Brazil have arrived as well. France have been training. There's some concerns within the France squad. A nasty little cut for Olivier Giroud, the Chelsea player, of course, formerly with Arsenal, moving to Chelsea in the January transfer window. He had a cut, but he's expected to be fit in time for the first match. Understand a 6-centimeter cut on his forehead from their final warm-up match. So we'll get the full details. Who's been training? There have been some open-air training sessions happening as the team starts settling in Russia, but it all gets underway on Thursday with the match between Russia and Saudi Arabia. All the latest World Cup news, it's right here on NTV, Dan.
Thank you very much, Sean. And Sean, which is your team in this World Cup, or which are your teams?
The old enemies, England and Argentina, of course, famously went to war in 1982. We all remember the Falklands War. And then, of course, the hand of God, Diego Maradona in 1986. I'm, of course, a massive England fan, but, of course, a big Argentina fan as well. So I'll be celebrating the old enemy. If you really push me in regards to an African team, it is Egypt. I'll go for Egypt and Mo Salah.
You know, with all that history, I hope your teams win, because we get so much history to justify your teams. I hope they do get far. We'll be catching up with you a little later on the broadcast, Sean. Thank you for that brief on the same. And just a reminder that in studio, we shall be keeping up with our conversation on Budget 2018 with focus on comparing Kenya's economy and that of other countries such as Singapore, also related matters as well. We shall also be speaking about the International Albinism Awareness Day, which is tomorrow, and it is themed Shining Our Light to the World. And like we've seen earlier on our screens, we have the ongoing discussion at Parliament where we have, it was meant to be the CSAs, Kobia and Karaoke, who are met before the Parliament team, but now they are speaking to the PS planning. That's Julius Muya. Let's listen in for just a bit.
Your sister or brother State Department to give you the responses for you to collate. And therefore you ask for more time, which we did give you. So when we came the second time, you actually had a complete response to all the queries under your signature, I suppose. Okay? From where you got them, it was neither here nor there as far as the committee is concerned. But also it so happened that when you came the second time, your counterpart from the State Department, I think, of Public Service and Youth was also here. Not by your invitation, but by our invitation. Okay? So it's just a coincidence that you bumped onto her. And she was able to come in to clarify some of those issues. From where we sit, since you had undertaken to collect the responses in respect to these queries, we thought that you had the capacity, which we still believe you have, to respond adequately on behalf of government, behalf of the executive. Now, the stance you are taking now looks like new to us and surprising. Nevertheless, you are lucky that your colleague has now joined you, Madam Kwekwe. Yes. Can you put you on oath before you even comment, so that we allow you to join forces, both of you, to respond to these queries? Because we want to be able to deal with these issues today in this sitting and clear them. Can you put her on? No, not. Where's the standing order? How you arrange between yourselves is your business. But please give us answers to those queries.
I, Safina Kwekwesungu, do swear that the evidence I shall give before this committee on the matters under its consideration shall be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Okay, thank you. Just make a comment, Madam Kwekwe, about your preparedness to deal with the matters before us.
Thank you, Chairman and honorable members. Just a preamble, we received a request from our colleague, Dr. Muya, to provide information to respond to questions that had been raised by this committee. Reason being that the questions were relating to a period in time when the funds in question were within the jurisdiction of the State Department of Planning. We did that, Honorable Chairman, Chairperson, and honorable members, and these relate to the years 2014-15, 15-16. You will recall, Honorable Chair, that the State Department of Gender Affairs, where Uwezo Fund, Uwezo Fund Act FGM became an accounting unit in 2016. We became an accounting unit in 2016, and therefore previous years we were within the State Department of Planning. So the response that we gave to our sister State Department of Planning are the responses that we generated ourselves.
Yes.
So we stand by those responses, and because I'm getting in when you're already midway, I will stand to be guided on what I need to be able to speak on. Thank you, sir.
Very good. So let's proceed. Dr. Muya, and respond to the questions that have been posed to you by Dr. Otiende, Honorable Dr. Otiende, before we move to the next paragraph. Just go on.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for that opportunity to respond. And in my response, what I would like to tell this committee is that some of the details that are required to deal with the responses here, they can only be dealt with or by the public service, not myself as PS for State Department for Planning, because they are the ones who have been handling this for the last 2-3 years. And last time when we were here, Honorable Chairman, we were with the State Department for Public Service, and they are the ones who fielded most of the responses. After I read, they are the ones who explained.
But he's just confirmed that he's in a position to respond to them, if I got her right.
Through the chair, then
pass it over to her.
I would pass on
Yes.
to my sister
Yes.
to deal with the question that has been asked. But because she wasn't here when the question was asked, may I seek your indulgence in getting the question asked so that she can respond to it?
Yeah, please, just repeat the question, Honorable Tiende.
Thank you. Madam Kwekwe, welcome. You had found us, we had gone ahead. If you have the book, we are on query number 281.1 and 2. And the Auditor General had raised a query that in the financial year we are dealing with, 2014-2015, there was an expenditure of 1.964 billion which had not been budgeted.
And as we go along with this broadcast, we shall be stepping into Parliament once again to see what PS Julius Muge is going to be responding to the park's questions and queries on the same. But crossing counties from Nairobi and Kericho is among the biggest tea producers in the country. But in the last few years, the tea industry has faced immense challenges in the county, and the greatest one being industrial unrest. Leaders alongside the government have tried to find solutions to permanently end the teething problems, but with little success. Today, the Senate Ad Hoc Committee on Tea in Kericho is meeting stakeholders in the industry to chart the way forward. We now join Kevin Mutai, who's at that meeting, for more details. Kevin, what is happening and what do we know as of now?
Oh, thank you so much, Dan, and we're glad to join the broadcast from Kericho. And here with me, we have the Ad Hoc Committee from the Senate who've come down here to just try and identify exactly the challenges that tea farmers are experiencing in this region. Remember, we've been experiencing some unrest, the protests, agitating for the pay rise, also the introduction of machines into the tea estates, which so many farmers have found it to be a challenge to them. And this committee, they are here exactly to find out these challenges, just to get directly from the farmers what they want done to ensure that their affairs are taken care of. Remember, also the budget is coming in, and you know, as a tea growing region, farmers in this region would like to know exactly what is in place for them. What has the government done to ensure that a common mwananchi who's a farmer down there will have to go home happy every day when he wakes up, goes to his farm, go if it's the tea placard, he or she would really like to know exactly what will happen. And joining me here without so much ado is the Governor, Kericho County, Prochepkwan, just to take us exactly through what we are expecting to get from this meeting, where hundreds of farmers, as I can see, they're here to witness and they're just engaging with the farmers. Thank you so much, Governor, for joining us.
Thank you very much, Kevin. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Senate Committee, and especially I would like to thank our Senator for providing the leadership, joined with his colleagues. Number two, I would like to thank the farmers for coming in large numbers. Tea business is the only constitutional business in Kenya, and it needs to be aligned to the constitution so that the tea farmer is seen to be enjoying fairness like any other farmer. As you know, there are very pertinent questions that need to be answered. Number one, how come one farmer in Kenya is paying 42 taxes? How come one tea business in Kenya is subjected to charges that we would call double charges in management? Number two, how come that there is one business where, despite drought, the price of tea is always low? How come a few brokers are allowed to control millions of farmers through price fixing? How come the tea farmers are plucking tea with fingers or their hands, others have commercialized using machines, yet their prices are still higher than hand-plucked tea?
Okay, Your Excellency, and we'd like to know what exactly is your government trying to do to ensure that all these challenges facing farmers are addressed?
I would like to say that, as you know, there is a court case which I have taken personally, challenging the unconstitutionality of tea, and we hope the court will give a ruling. I don't want to be in contempt of court, but more important, you see, we did an audit and we demand 87 billion Kenya shillings to be refunded to farmers.
Okay, thank you, Excellency. I'm told that you will have to come back to us later, but just to switch directly to the Senator.
Thank you, Kevin.
Just Senator, this is a committee that is for the first time, I think, coming to Kericho under your leadership.
Yeah.
What are we expecting different to see this time?
We're expecting to hear the plight of the farmers, because you know, despite tea being the leading foreign income exchange earner to this country, there is nothing that these farmers can write home about from that particular money. They don't get to enjoy the benefits of their work, and they have been manipulated by cartels for so many years. That's why we are gathered here today, because we are trying to seek a long-lasting solution. The Ad Hoc Committee of the Senate will retire to write its report with a view to doing the tea bill of 2018 that will divorce the farmers from the cartels. For so many years, our farmers have been oppressed by, one, you've been told about the 42 levels of taxes that are taxed by the government. You've been told about the monopolistic tendencies of this industry, whereby the farmer is feeling oppressed for so long, and therefore we've come here to take the views of the farmers
And when we finally and eventually do a law that will align the needs of the tea sector in this country to the demands of our constitution, nobody will say that it is the work of the Senate, it will be the work of the Mwananchi.
After your report, Senator, what will you ensure the leadership of Kericho County that all whatever that is contained in the report will be adhered to the latter?
We will eventually, when we pass the legislation, then we'll have only one request. We'll request the president to sign it into law immediately so that the farmers can be liberated. There's no two ways about it. Because our final end game is to have a law that will align the tea sector with the demands of the Constitution of Kenya, where competition should be the order of the day and not management by cartels as is happening in the tea sector.
Thank you so much. That was Senator Aaron Cheriot, and previously spoke with Governor Ponchin Kwani, and other leaders also are here from Bomet, the Senator from Bomet. There are area members of Parliament, that is Nelson Koech, Sylvanus Maritim. I can see among them also members of the County Assembly, and they're all here to mark this particular milestone in trying to change the affairs of the tea farmer in this region, especially in Kericho, where it's one of the biggest regions in the country producing tea. But for now, Dan, I take it back to you in studio. We'll be back with more details on the happenings down here in Kericho.
Thanks very much, Kevin Mutai, for giving us that brief and just information. And it's interesting, for many years we've had this conversation about there being many taxes in tea trade, and it's still the same conversation going on in the year 2018. Question is, will what they are pushing for actually see the light of day, rather? And now we cross out the county of Homa Bay, where Bernardo Juang is at a meeting where there's a discussion in regards to HIV by stakeholders in the health sector. Bernard, what's happening, and what's the conversation all about?
Good morning, Dan. We are streaming live here from the lakeside town of Homa Bay. Remember, what's going on here is medical practitioners from different organizations dealing with HIV and AIDS are currently meeting health department from Homa Bay County, chanting way forward on how to curb HIV prevalence rate, which is being said is on the rise. Remember, Homa Bay County is surrounded with Lake Victoria, and the main activities going on here is fishing, and mostly what's going on along the beaches is sex for fish, and they are here to chant way forward on how to curb this issue, on how to teach people on the use of protections. And apart from that, Homa Bay County Health Department is also saying that they are ready for the Cuban doctors, and they are saying that that will improve health services at the facilities, and also it will also reduce the issue of the cases of referrals, and those people who have been getting cases of referral are also getting the services at the facility. And currently we are going to talk to one person here just to tell us what are they doing here, and the way forward, what is the way forward on how to curb HIV/AIDS here in Homa Bay County. Welcome.
Yes, my name is Professor Richard Muga. I'm the CEC for Health in Homa Bay County. And today we had a meeting with the different partners who work with us on different areas, including HIV/AIDS, including malaria, including reproductive health, and improvement of women's health in Homa Bay County. You know, Homa Bay has been leading in HIV/AIDS. We are not proud about this, but we want to change this situation. So all partners have come together to plan together and see where they can continue to bring what we call HIV/AIDS free generation, where children who are born to mothers who have HIV/AIDS are born free of HIV/AIDS. And that is the glory that we have in Homa Bay. And I also have with me the one who coordinates the youth activity on HIV/AIDS.
Okay, could you just present the statistics?
Okay, my name is Philip Ochieng. I coordinate HIV/AIDS activities in Homa Bay County. As you are all aware, we are one of the counties with the highest burden. Our prevalence stands at 26%, with an incidence rate of about 2%. But we also have to mention that over time, Homa Bay County has really tried. We have significant milestones in terms of HIV. For example, between the year 2013 to 2015, we were able to reduce new HIV infections in children by 63%, which is a significant achievement. And we're also able to reduce new infections in adults. Those are above 15 years by 29%. Again, in terms of reducing infections in infants, we have tried, we have a significant number of infants who are born of HIV positive mothers who are coming out to be HIV negative. And it's one of the things that we are celebrating as a county. And again, we have decentralized ART care. 3/4 of our facilities are offering HIV care and treatment. So that one is quite an achievement.
So thank you very much, Dan. Remember, these people, they are saying that along the lakes, many people have been affected, and this issue. Okay, it is being said along the lake, we have sex for fish. Where are we going to curb this?
My name is Dr. Gordon Okomo, the Director of Health, Homa Bay. Professor Muga has talked about us having the highest prevalence. And for us to curb all this, we need all multi-sectoral approach. And that's why today we've come and met with the partners. We alone as Homa Bay County, we cannot do it, but we need development partners to come on board.
Thank you very much. You've just heard from them. They are saying that they are ready. They are now ready. They are prepared on, and they are going to curb this disease once and for all. And remember, what they are saying that they are going to provide protections along the beaches, offered maybe education to youth, fishermen on the benefits of using protection. Back to you, Dan.
Thank you very much, Bernardo Juang, for that insightful conversation in the county of Homa Bay. And ladies and gentlemen, we do know that this is the week when we have the national budget being read out to Parliament by the CS for Treasury, that is Rotich, and we shall begin to the conversation about the budget right now.
Budget analysis in association with RSM.
So once again, ladies and gentlemen, we have Ashif Kasam, the Executive Chairman of RSM, as well as Elvis Ogeto, partner at RSM. Thank you for joining us once again, gentlemen. Looking at our budget and our economy as Kenya, when we compare with, for instance, Singapore, we were once peers, but now we are not there. When you look at, the statistics on Singapore, for instance, you see that its growth is 2%. Its economic growth is 2%. Compared to ours, which is different. We find ours is, like last year it was a low, but it was 4.9%. But we still see that Singapore is considered a better country to deal in business. What's the correlation? Someone may think a linear correlation being lower growth, lower opportunities.
Okay, then I think Singapore has three different aspects. One, it's a very small island, okay, or a very small country, with a population currently of only 6 million people. And even in the 1990s, when their population was 3 million, ours was 23 million. And Singapore was going through the same pains as Kenya was going at independence, that it didn't have enough jobs, it didn't have enough opportunities for its people. The port was controlled by the British, and there's a lot of trade that passes through that port. Its location is an amazing thing, okay? And so location played, in its hands. But what happened is when they got independence and there were no jobs, they realized they had to do something. And they did three things. The first is they partnered with international companies to make sure that manufacturing was one area which they saw as an opportunity. Second is logistics. But they did three other things which really, changed everything. They created an environment that was safe, corruption-free, low in taxation, and unimpeded by unions. And they took a dictatorial approach in how they went through that process. And it was a process. It's not like Kenya currently. In Kenya currently, we say we want the manufacturing sector to grow. But if you look at the new income tax bill, we are slapping a 35% tax, on companies over 500 million. We need international companies to come and consult to us, yet we have a withholding tax of 20% on the fees that they charge us. And if you gross that up, because those people don't bear their tax, you end up paying 25% more on that cost because you need them. So our entire tax structure doesn't help us to grow. In Singapore, they saw what the opportunities were, and the fiscal policy, the monetary policy, their business environment, the enabling environment, and the tax policies all were lined up. And there was a draconian approach to this is what we want, this is how we'll get it. If there was opposition, it was put aside. It was not political bickering, it was action. And that's what changed Singapore to where it is today.
All right, we see that Singapore, is rated as one of the least corrupt countries in the world. What did they do? What have they done? Was it because it's easier to rein in fewer people than Kenya with our over 40 million people?
I believe so. When you look at the size of the country and the policies that they adopted, in terms of ensuring that you have sound, clear policies that are adopted and followed through in terms of implementation plan on the budget, and the leadership style, really, because you had visionary leaders who really had a plan in place. They looked at where they were coming from, surrounded by hostile neighbors. And I think when you look at the resolve taken as a people, they despite the fact that the younger population now would be thinking that the draconian application of the laws may not be favorable, I believe they moved together as a people. They were aligned to ensure that they have a greater good for the country, as opposed to have any selfish interests as groups.
Right, and so we also see that the country is said to be the most pro-business. We have also been improving in terms of our ease of doing business, at least as far as the World Bank, ratings go, like we've spoken about yesterday. And we know the CS for industry, Dann Mwangi, really, drums that message in that, we're improving because of the processes, going digital and a number of things. Do we then foresee ourselves at least narrowing the gap to Singapore in terms of the ease of doing business?
First, I think let me come on the point that Elvis just raised on corruption. Yes. And there are two examples. When Singapore put in a process that you can't chew gum in public, there was a fine of $1,000 or something like that. And it made sure that nobody actually chewed gum in the public. When they introduced a strict control on, just hanging anybody we found with drugs, I remember somebody traveling on Emirates told me that the announcement was, when they reached Singapore, is that if you're drugs, leave it in the plane here. Okay, don't take it out. Okay, and that was the message that the government sent out. Okay, and when you send that message out that we are serious in enforcing what we need to do, then people will follow it. Now,
sorry, let me just cut you short for just a bit, because I'm told that the Auditor General, that's Edward Oko, is speaking in regards to corruption as a very key player in this whole conversation in the county of Mombasa. Let's cross over there and just listen in, then we'll come back to our conversation.
The people are seeing eye to eye with corruption, and that's why a lot more is now coming out about the misuse of resources at the county level. And that's not a bad thing. It's not good that we cannot condone corruption at any level. But the fact that at least now the people can see it in reality happening on county level, and they are now concerned. And that is where we are going to go. Once the people are getting concerned enough, our conscience will have to be raised against corruption.
A while back, your office was speaking about the capacity to audit all the institutions, and you were saying that it does not have enough personnel and resources. Is it the same case now?
No, I think the situation has tremendously improved, and in the current budget, I thank the parliamentarians for having increased my resources a little bit more. And in fact, these resources they increased was to allow me to also employ a little bit, not many, but some more staff. They've allowed me to a little bit of money to actually partner with other professionals who are out there to do more work and to cover a lot more with the resources I have.
So now you're satisfied?
No, we can never be satisfied. I think I was fighting for even more, because there are still a lot of challenges, because my office is not in every county. And one of the things is to make sure that at least in the future I'm nearer to the counties, because the nearer I am, maybe it will be a preventative. It will be more preventative. But at the moment, with whatever little we have got, we've used it well. We built an office in Garissa to cover the northern. We are trying to build an office in Kakamega. We are building, and we are also building another office in Eldoret. And these are where we have been given land. So other places we have not been given land, so we haven't built. But the little money we've been given, we are trying to devolve the audit to go closer to the people. And I think that's the way we should go because of the exact problems you're talking about, increasing misuse of resources at the county levels.
Maybe so you can talk about technology, how it boosted your...
The technology is really, in our case, we are trying to leverage very much on technology because we know that no number of people will ever respond to the mandate, the wide mandate which we have. Increasingly, now you have more resources going to the public, down to the ground, and even at national. Now, technology is to exactly allow us to work smart and to cover more with the limited resources we have. And we are already doing that. We are trying to leverage our audit management systems on technology such that we can produce more with the limited resources we have. I think that's fine.
When
Yeah.
will you have offices in all the 47 counties?
Sorry?
To curb corruption? When will you have your offices in the 47 counties to curb such corruption?
No, when I cannot tell because the resources are limited. But I'll keep on fighting for resources just like anybody else for us to have more resources. It will have to be not my will, but it's the will of the country to allow me to be in every county. Thank you.
The Auditor General, Edward Oko, speaking in the county of Mombasa, and the bit that we got, at least some of the highlights is that he says that he's gotten more resources which have been allocated to him from Parliament, still saying that he would still need more in order for his office to be represented across the country in all 47 counties. To get back to our conversation in studio, and Ashif, you were saying something, sorry, I cut you short when we were crossing over to Mombasa.
Yeah, I think the issue about, the question that you asked about the ease of doing business and if we can attract foreign direct investments. I think the ease of doing business is just a very small indicator. It says how many days do you need to register a business, and in fact it's not even a limited liability company. It is just a business name, and most of the people who come and register companies here, or foreign people who come and invest in Kenya don't come and register a business name, they register a company. And I think it still takes nearly 2 weeks to get a company registered in Kenya. That's the reality on the ground. The second thing is electricity connections. But what we are not talking about, that Kenya is one of the highest costs of electricity for any country that aspires to be a manufacturing country. So the whole issue of Singapore was very different. It is not that we are doing the talking and saying we are improving in world index. The issue was not world index. Is what do we need to do internally to be competitive? And the first thing was to create an enabling environment. Anybody who went there went to a one-stop office. Okay? They didn't have rogue lawyers, they didn't have rogue auditors. Okay? You were all given proper service. If there was a complaint against a professional, that professional was dealt with properly. Okay? So they created an enabling environment of trust for foreign investors. They also created tax laws that were very friendly, okay, that help people come there. And what they decided is that, 2% or 5% of $1 trillion is better than 30% of $1 billion. Okay? And that's where they looked at the whole philosophy of growth. And when we look at, the growth rate, and today might be Singapore is growing at 2%, but the growth rate has been phenomenal in the olden days. They used to grow at 36%. There were times in 2000 they grew at 95%, okay, over a 10-year period, okay. And their annual growth rate, used to be about 10%, 8.9%, 15.2% in the 2010s. So they had a phenomenal growth rate. And when we look at the foreign direct investment in that country, because of that and the enabling environment, and I've written these articles actually in Nation, where I say that if we want to create Kenya to be a financial hub and a manufacturing hub, one, we need a judiciary that performs impartially and on time. Secondly, we need tax laws that are enabling for people to invest here and for us to import the technology, whether it's services or machinery, to help us with whatever we need. Third is that we need to teach ethics from nursery school, okay? Not teaching ethics at university when it's not part of your culture. Ethics have to be part of your culture, and it is not part of our culture, okay? And the fourth thing is we need to train people in all the areas that we need, okay? And that training, whether it's technical, whether it's formal education, whether it's in trading, we need all that, training. And these were all done together. And in 1990s, the foreign direct investment in US $1 million was about $5 billion US for Singapore. It has now multiplied 14% to 75 billion. Kenya used to be at 57 million. We have gone 6 times to 393 million US dollars. Okay? So, if you look at the sheer numbers, they've just scaled up because of the type of the regime. But I think there were 3 things. There was zero tolerance to corruption. There was 100% commitment on making it a safe political environment. And remember, politics affects economy. And once you've got a safe political environment, the economic stability also follows. So, these old curves every 5 years when we dip and we keep on talking about it, that went away. And the third thing they did is create value addition in those days. And that value addition is what has helped, because a small island of 5 million people, okay, has a GDP of, I think, what, 30 times Kenya, 30, 40 times Kenya, and it's because of that aspect of value addition.
Ogeto, we're speaking about the aspect of being a friendly place for business. It's pro-business, and Singapore is said to be one of the most pro-business countries, and part of it is attributed to the fact that it has low tax rates. Now, considering Kenyans feel they are heavily taxed, just in that comparison, are we seeing that if we still remain in the same kind of tax system, especially because, I mean, there have been calls for no increments to taxes, but do we foresee ourselves still being considered very pro-business despite our tax rates?
I believe every investor who comes in obviously wants a good return, and if we are going to take away that return, 30% of that return or even more, depending on any tax increases that are likely to come up in the budget, then that obviously becomes one thing that is an undoing for us to attract a good investment. However, when you look and compare with Singapore, everyone wants to do business where there's no uncertainty. Rather than have dips and troughs, we have a lot of vulnerabilities that affect us. Every 5 years when you have an election, then everyone is on a wait and see mode. You want more certainty, you want more control, in terms of to what extent do we rein in on unions to ensure that the cost of labor is also something that is contained in a country. Any investor would obviously want to ensure or operate in an environment where there's more predictability. I believe that is one area that we need to work on, other than, of course, aspects to do with security. Unfortunately, we've been affected, considering the region we are in, by what is happening around us, the neighbors around us. The government has obviously committed resources to ensure that that does not affect business. We are seeing a lot of companies still coming through because we are putting in other enablers as a country. Infrastructure, there's a lot that is going into infrastructure. About a quarter of the budget this year we are seeing is going to improve infrastructure. We are also seeing increases in education. We need to be able to align and ensure we have a workforce that is aligned to the kind of investment that is coming on board. If you're talking about investing in fintech, do we have a workforce that has the proper skills to be able to fit in and provide the skills required by employers? So anyone coming on board wants to ensure they can be able to ease of communication, costs, reining in on costs, including cost of employment, power, and of course a safe haven to do business.
And just staying on you and the point you brought up, and which Ashif had also alluded to, the aspect of the kind of governance that is there in the country, which part of it, or significant part of it, has implications on corruption. And Ashif had mentioned that there's some sort of a dictatorial approach, where you've got a very tough leader, iron-fisted, who is not going to be, budging to beat cartels or to any other influences. Does Kenya need to get there? for us to actually grow our economy, so that the budget we're trying to finance, the largest budget ever, can actually be realized in a more practical way, that KRA can actually say, hey guys, we got enough and we have change?
Yes, we need to divorce politics from business. We need to, in a sense, run the country as though it was a business. Yesterday we talked about people looking for the benefits rather than what they are doing for the country. When MPs look for salary packs or increases, so we need to come to a point where, yes, for sake of democracy and governance, we obviously need to establish a way of choosing our leaders, but that should not interfere from one cycle to another with what we are doing on a day-to-day basis. So there should be a firm resolve. We are seeing a bit of that happening currently in terms of devolving or divorcing the politics from running the country. But yes, there's a lot to be done to ensure that whatever we are doing does not have a political angle or aspect to it. Be it the benevolent, as many would say dictator, but someone who is able to rein in and ensure that what you are determined to do as a government is done within your cycle of governance.
Okay, even as we keep the conversation going, we now cross briefly to Parliament, where Leila Mohammed has been following the meeting where the CS for Health, that's Cicely Kariuki, as well as Margaret Kobia, were meant to be before the National Assembly's committee, that's the Public Accounts Committee, to respond to questions of the alleged corruption of the National Youth Service, but they were a no-show. And Leila Mohammed now joins us to give us a brief on what happened, because we saw the PS for planning, that Julius Muya, who was before there as alongside other PSs. Leila, what happened by the time the meeting came to a close?
Well, by the time the committee was folding for this particular day, the chairman of Piawanda was a very frustrated individual, as he could not get the answers that he expected from Dr. Julius Muya, who gave a response to the floor of that committee, but was not able to give the finer details, that is, the nitty-gritties as to why in 2014-2015, 1.96 billion shillings meant to be given to state departments from the Ministry of Planning was given out without going through the IFMI system. And yes, he says that the money was given out and it was unbudgeted for. And then he did not go into details to explain why this happened, and this created a lot of concern amongst the members of the Public Accounts Committee, and some were insisting that if indeed this response was written, then why is there no elaborate answer being given? And for the PS Muya, he insisted that he is in charge of planning, and at this particular moment he cannot be able to give the finer details, as this particular monies was under the State Department of Youth Affairs and Public Service. And as we are aware, the PS of that State Department is currently in police custody. She is awaiting trial for the loss of monies within the NYS. And so done, there was also the Principal Secretary, Safina Kwekwe, in charge of gender, and she also came in just a way of, because now she's the one in charge of the youth and public service docket, but even she could not give the details that the committee expected answers from, and that is why they raised concerns, and they're saying that there is need for both CSS Kariuki and Margaret Kobia to appear. However, earlier in the setting, we were told that both CSS had written to the committee saying that they will not be available, and thus had availed their principal secretaries. But then again, some of the members of the committee were saying that the committee needs to be taken with the seriousness as it deserves. And Ndindi Nyoro, the member of parliament for Kiharu, went ahead to say that there are some concerns about the current CS for Health, Cicely Kariuki, and they're saying there are questions as about issues regarding the Ministry of Agriculture when she was the principal secretary then. So they are so bitter as to why this particular time, this is the third time that Muya is appearing before this committee. The first time he said that he was not in a position to give the answers that they needed and needed to engage with his other PSS. And when he came back, he was present with PS Lillian Omolo. However, this time around, he just read a statement by one Sami Mwangi, who apparently is also under investigation for the loss of millions of shillings under the NYS fold. So that is where the committee has folded for today. They expected to host various departments within that particular ministry, but because they were not moving forward in terms of understanding why almost 2 billion shillings did not go through the IFMI system, they have asked the PSS to go and consolidate themselves and then come back at a later date. However, they are also saying there is reason for the CSS, both Kobia and Karaoke, to appear before them to answer questions regarding to the loss of millions of shillings at various departments.
Thank you very much, Leila Mohammed, for that update on what has been happening when we were away from Parliament in terms of our live coverage, but you've given us a good appraisal of what's happening. And yes, again, the conversation about the NYS scam continues and the allegations around it, as well as concerns over when the CS is going to actually appear. That is CS Cecily Kariuki, who was in charge at the time when the alleged malpractice happened, as well as the CS Margaret Kobia, who had appeared before Parliament some time ago, but CS Kariuki is yet to appear at all. The last time the media tried to ask her for a comment when she was in Geneva, she insisted that she will only respond to any allegations or any questions when she gets formal notification or formal invitation by Parliament, for instance, and she was not going to make any kind of statements when she's out of the country. So right now she's again out of the country on an official assignment in the United States, and we are waiting to see when she comes back, when she appears before the committee, and we shall be definitely there to bring you the live conversation going. And now coming back to our conversation on, in studio, when you look at the aspect of a country being having economic freedom, we see that Singapore is number 2 globally according to some rankings, and Kenya is at 129, and it's actually considered, it's largely unfree. Maybe just a shift to begin with, what is the understanding around what economic freedom means in this kind of situation, and how can Kenya then try and jump up the ladder?
Okay, I think economic freedom, there are various definitions, but it's basically having a right enabling environment. And what is that enabling environment? One is that it's very certain what your licenses are, what your taxes are, what you're allowed to do with the money that you make, what the regulations are. So there is very little regulation, but a strong piece of regulation. It's not various pieces of regulations that you need to interpret. In Kenya, if you want to do something, there are 10 different pieces of legislation sometimes that you need to look at, and that makes life quite difficult, because for every problem we create a regulation or a law which then becomes difficult to follow. And in these countries, what they've done is they've looked at a framework, that this is the framework within which you operate, and if you do wrong, then you are liable for it. And the main thing with economic freedom is that it looks at public interest. Are you doing something in public interest? Are you doing something within the confines of the policy stipulated for that industry or that particular line of business? And finally, if you're wrong, then there are very harsh consequences of it, but the consequences are also very clear.
Okay, and we've talked about Kenya having a high cost of power, for instance, which is one of the inhibiting factors in regards to growing our economic potential in terms of manufacturing, which is one again of the big 4. But you see, Singapore is really reliant on exports. It means it has grown its manufacturing sector. And what can we borrow from Singapore, for instance, in order to see whether we can boost our manufacturing sector, so it can then boost our exports, because our trade-off balance with many of the big countries is very much against us as Kenya.
I believe we need to appreciate the fact that we can't do this alone as a country. So if you look at Singapore, about I would say 2/3 of what they manufacture and export is largely dependent on what FDIs are able to produce and export. So the fact that you are able to attract and have foreigners come in, operate freely, and be able to produce and export, that works to your advantage. The other bit, obviously, is when you look at having policies and direction drive to ensure that whatever you target to do. So, for example, Singapore has been able to move from, the very basic agro-based industry, which I would say largely in Kenya we have been. I know we are trying to move manufacturing to about 15% of GDP, to going into biotech, aerospace. But how they did this, obviously, is to ensure that the people have the right skills to be able to operate, enable the FDAs to operate and manufacture, export whatever they have in place. So hopefully with the new education system, we are looking to focus more on what we want, where we hope to be as a country, and ensure we have the right skills to be able to manufacture. And in terms of enablers, we obviously need to ensure that whatever is sound for manufacturing, if you look at the regime of taxation, are we going to tax the raw material? Are we going to tax the finished goods that are coming from outside more heavily? When you look at your railway levy, for example, so are we really promoting people to have the raw material, to have the value addition within the country to promote export? So aligning our policies to ensure that we promote export would be useful for the government.
All right, thank you very much. And we'll be coming back to the conversation in just a bit. But first, take a short break on NTV Today. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to NTV Today. We're glad you're staying with us, and we continue the conversation in regards to the economy and the budget in preparation for the budget presentation on Thursday. And gentlemen, we see again still giving the parallels between, or the lack of parallels between Kenya and Singapore in terms of our economies. What is the borrowing trend, Ashif, in terms of for Singapore? Kenya, we know we've been borrowing, we're in huge debt, running over 4 trillion shillings. What is Singapore not doing or doing in regards to the borrowing?
So interestingly, Singapore is self-sufficient, so they don't have borrowing. The only reason Singapore borrow is to keep a benchmark interest for others to follow, okay? And also that is used for very certain projects. So the borrowing is pretty much limited. But I think, you know, with a smaller country that can happen. If you look at Kenya, the cost of running Kenya is not easy. Kenya is 500 odd 1,000 square, kilometers. The bigger problem is only 1/3 of the country is arable, 2/3 is desert. We don't have the friendliest of neighbors, especially if you look at Somalia. The borders around Somalia need to be guarded. We have had Uganda in the earlier days. Okay, so the military cost of running Kenya is also high because of the tension in the area. So the issue is not borrowing. The issue is, are we doing what we are required to do? If you're doing if you have a plan, if you have an objective, and we set that objective, are all our action items for that objective in tandem with achieving that objective? And I think that's the thing we can borrow. If we have 10 items to do to reach that objective, and all these 10 sub items or action plans are all in tandem, you can reach where Singapore has reached. Now, a lot of people tell me that with all these issues that we keep on talking about, high borrowing, doom and gloom, insecurity around still the Somali border, is Kenya, on the course of, disaster? My answer is totally no, okay? Because we have 3 or 4 things that are going for us. One is that we have a democracy that works, okay? We have some problems with it, but there is a democracy that works. The second thing is, I think recently there is a will to tackle in the 2 biggest challenges we have, okay, or 3 biggest challenges we have. The first challenge that we have is corruption. The second is healthcare of people. And the third is the whole issue of value addition, and we are tackling that. And if you look at evolution of countries, and if you study all the countries that have gone from totally developing countries to developed countries, I think Kenya is pretty much at the journey of 4 steps. Kenya is on the 3rd step. It's what it does in this 3rd step that is going to take it to the next level. And that is why I say we are at a flux. Okay? If we don't do the things right, and we don't have all our action plans to meet every objective correct, we could have a problem. We could over borrow in time to come. Our infrastructure will not work. We will not have ability to repay our loans, because if you look at our loans, next year our repayment itself is about 400 billion shillings. Okay? That's nearly half of our loans have to be repaid in 1 year. This is in the next financial year. So this is 18-19, I'm talking about 19-20. Okay? The second thing is our interest cost is nearly 500 billion, between 400 and 500 billion. That again we need to rein on it. Okay? So we have certain very difficult obstacles that we have created ourselves, but we can unwind them, and that will need commitment. If we unwind this, I think, look at the labor pool that we have. We have probably one of the best educated workforces around. Everybody is literate. A big portion of the population is literate. Okay? We are probably, in terms of using financial services, a leader in the world in terms of using mobile money to create an economy. Okay? So there are certain things that are very strong. It is how we build on those certain things and take them to the next level is what will determine. And I think, if you ask me, the time frame, I think, is the next 2 to 3 years. If we don't get it right in the next 2 to 3 years, we will be like any other country. But if we get it right in the next 2 to 3 years, we could be in a totally different planet in terms of the growth in Africa and where we see ourselves. Because also, when we compare to the problems that other large countries in Africa have, Nigeria, if you look at the problems in South Africa that they are currently facing, okay, Kenya is still far better than some of the problems that these other competing countries are facing compared to what we are facing.
Okay, and something that has really come out clearly during some of the comments is that the size of the country has a significant impact on how effective measures can be in terms of bringing results of a stronger economy. And when we think about our system of devolution, it's still give and take in its beginning stages to some extent. Are we saying that, given that Singapore is pretty small compared to Kenya, that has partly helped it to grow its economy and its impact, are we saying in the fullness of time, in a number of, call it 30, 40 years or however long, the counties could end up being like small Singapore, such that we can have very flourishing independent, not independent entirely, but units that will form one greater country?
Yeah, I believe that's what we should look forward to. When you look at Singapore, it really is very comparable to Nairobi in terms of both size and population. So if Singapore can flourish with that size, why can't we have Nairobi, for example, as a model city, flourish and pull other counties along? For this to happen, obviously, we need the county governments, even if it's the 1, 2, 3 things they need to do within the 5-year cycle that they're in power, to ensure that there's impact and a difference between 5 years ago and now. We need that kind of leadership to cascade down to the county levels for that to be a realization. Of course, funding will be an issue. So to what extent are you able to generate funds to be able to drive your policies to see through what you have in place? So there's obviously the need to ensure that as we come up with plans, we need to be realistic in terms of what we have as available funds to carry out the projects and policies that we have in place. And as I mentioned previously, the realization that we can't do this alone. If you look at Singapore, they're pretty much isolated. About 2/3 of the population were living in slum-like condition not many years back. But the resolve to look beyond, pretty much comparing themselves to Israel, that Israel would have hostile neighbors around them, but what have they done? They don't have natural resources, but what have they done to ensure that even with the conditions they have, they're able to see something good coming out of it? So for Kenya, what are our strengths? What do we have as a country that we can actually focus on and ensure that we move from one stage to another? So I think that should be where the focus is. And yes, you're right. Rather than looking at it as we are one big country and we have problems, Turkana is a good example. Not many years back, we would not look at Turkana as one of the counties that can come up to be a leading county in terms of contribution to the economy. Now, of course, we see with natural resources, the oil coming out, Kitui, there's a coal mining. So every county, I believe, with a little bit introspection to say what is it that we can contribute, what is our strength in our contribution to the Kenyan economy, with the right leadership and policies, this will be something that can be realized.
Okay, and Ashif, you've talked about the fact that we've got a repayment of about 400 billion shillings in 18-19, right? That is what we may be looking at. What needs to be done to avoid any kind of a crisis to happen, even in terms of as the budgeting processes go on and the likes?
I think to me the first thing is that we have to be realistic of our revenues. Secondly, we know we have a borrowing and we have to repay it. To me, this is a chance to look at restructuring our borrowing, which I said yesterday. What is our risk? If our risk is low, we have got a year to plan and go to the market and say, we are a low-risk country. Why are we paying you a significant premium on our interest rates? And it happens with a lot of companies. Okay, you look at listed companies in Kenya who have had debts and have to reschedule debts. Nothing wrong with it. Okay, the issue is that in that reschedule, are you doing it in a panic mode, or are you doing it in a mode that is, properly thought through, based on your strengths and based on, the fundamentals of the economy? And we have a strong fundamental in the economy. Our inflation is pretty much controlled. We don't have runaway inflation. Our currency is stable. Okay, so why do we not plan and say, look, this is what we need to do. This is a framework against which we will borrow, And if we are able to do that, and the main thing is if we set an example by reining in some of these cases that the last 2 days I've been sitting here, 40% of the time is looking at scams that are going on, okay, and you know what will happen to the scams. We rein in on 3 or 4 of these scams and just clean them, and you know make sure that the people who are responsible are locked in. It'll also create a significant investor confidence, so that you don't need to pay them that 8 and 9%. They will come here at 5.5%, because in their own countries they are getting nothing. In fact, there are some countries where actually to put money in a bank, they actually charge you 0.1% interest just because you're keeping money in the bank. Okay? So it's just creating that macro environment where people have the feel-good factor, and running an economy is a feel-good factor. If somebody feels good, somebody feels safe, he'll go into that economy. If somebody doesn't feel safe, doesn't feel good, okay, don't go into that economy. And the interesting part is that, are we all happy? Are our people comfortable in where we are living? Okay. Today I've got 3 people, just before when I was sitting outside, 3 people sending me adverts to apply for Canadian citizenship because it's opened. And one of them came from Treasury, somebody in Treasury. And I was wondering why somebody in Treasury needs to send me this. Okay. But the reality is that we are not happy. And once we create that happiness, happiness is an internal happiness. External is perception. If we create that internal happiness and a good perception outside, 300, 400 billion with the way Kenya is going is not a big aspect. Okay? And if we are able to tackle and bring in proper collections of the tax evaders, not increasing taxes. And in some things we also need to look at our taxes. One of the discussions I was having with Elvis is the whole issue of electronics. People who buy electronics don't want to pay VAT unless you are a company where you are going to claim input VAT. Okay? So the companies who claim input VAT don't add anything to the economy because you pay it and you claim it back. So something like electronics, which we are not going to manufacture, and it's not in our plan in the next 5 to 10 years to set up electronic factories, why don't we know that we are going to be a net exporter of electronics, reduce the duty on it to probably 15–20%, and exempt it from VAT totally. So the whole fraud of VAT is gone. And people who are selling those electronics have to bear the input cost. So you cut some of the areas where fraud is taking place. And as soon as you start doing that, you also encourage somebody to now go and buy from a formal place, individuals to go and buy from a formal place. So we really need to look at our entire tax system, not what we have done historically, not what the East African community does. What is it that we want in an environment, and what is the taxation we should be levying, whether it's direct taxes, whether it's indirect taxes, okay, and especially the issue of excise duty, VAT, which actually hits the end consumer. How do you work around that? Income tax is the other area. At 40,000 shillings or less than 40,000 shillings, you are paying the highest bracket of tax. In other countries, that highest bracket of tax comes at about 10 million shillings a year. Okay, so we are not creating enough disposable income. And remember, to a smaller, to a person who is earning below 40–50,000 shillings, if he's saving tax, he's going to spend in the development of the economy. He's not going to hoard that money and save that money. Okay, so to us, how do we create also that market for our goods and services, okay, for people to go and invest in the development of the economy through consumption? And those are the things we need to look at broadly, not in the way we have done things, but in a very new light of how we should be doing things.
Okay, and we've talked about a lot to do with how Singapore is almost a place you can go benchmark, so to speak. Are there any lessons, Ogeto, that Kenya can offer to Singapore, that Singapore can actually borrow from us, especially in light of how we've managed some larger scale of projects, for instance, and the likes?
Yeah, there are a couple. Of course, one of the areas that was alluded to previously is that we are a mature democracy. When you look at Singapore and the freedom in terms of expression, press freedom, there's obviously a bit that they can learn from us. The other area, obviously, that we are catching up on is in terms of your technology and the rate at which we've been able to attract countries, especially the ones in the ICT space, to come and do business in Kenya. I think we are really up there in terms of ensuring that we have enablers, communication-wise, to have companies literally migrating headquarters from what was previously South Africa to the Kenyan environment. Mobile money, in terms of ease of being able to transact and carry out settlements, is one area that Kenya has really led the way to the rest of the world. And yes, when you look at the setup and the improvements and the resolve that we have as a country to improve what would be our governance structures, when you look at Singapore, it obviously has only one system, bicameral, unicameral compared to the Kenyan bicameral. So we have checks and balances that we've instituted. Of course, we need to ensure that these are not impediments to development, such that we have things slowing down, in terms of introducing other layers of bureaucracy in decision making.
Okay, and gentlemen, just as we come to a close of today's conversation, I'll begin with you, Ashif. What are your closing remarks in regards to Kenya aspiring to be a stronger economy, and how these kind of aspirations can be factored into budgeting?
Okay, I think we need to look at the successful countries in the world. We talked about Singapore, but look at India, look at China, look at USA. These are vast countries, okay, with vast populations. But they've done three things that, they've factored through the system. One is that the rule of law works. You know what the law is? It is simple and it is enforced. Secondly, the taxation system is not complex. It is very clear. Third is, what is your strength that you can utilize? India's strength is the people. China's strength has been that it's a dictatorial approach. This is what the government wants to do. The planning is done around it, and there is a commitment, everybody will follow it. But one thing that every country can borrow from China is that before you become any employee of the government, you have to go through training. You go into a small area, you go into the very rough areas, you actually learn development of the country from top down, bottom up, okay? And when you get that experience, you have a total experience of how to manage things, and it is only the very senior people who are successful, who go through the test of fire and pass through the test of fire, okay, are the ones who are then promoted. Okay, and that thing is something that we need to aspire with meritocracy. So democracy itself does not work without meritocracy. And I think democracy initially was meritocratic, that you wanted the best person to come and rule you. You wanted the best person to be elected. We have now gone away from this issue of meritocratic thing to an economic power, that the person who has more money is the one who will get elected. And I think we need to, when we are re-looking at the constitution, make our constitution more democratic and stop this whole issue of the spending money to win elections.
All right. Ogeto, your closing remarks in regards to the same.
I believe one of the areas I was admiring the availability of the balance sheet, personal balance sheets. We're talking about the Singaporeans having 6 times the asset compared to liabilities. We're talking about 1 in 6 families actually having at least $1 million in cash savings. So when you look at it in terms of having funds, both as a disposable income to spend consumption-wise and for investment, that works quite a lot. And the government is, the Singaporean government is actually playing a lead in giving tax breaks to individuals to be able to invest. And when you look at it, it's probably only second to the US in terms of the number of entrepreneurs that you have in the country. So you're looking at a situation where when you talk about going into manufacturing, you don't just have government playing the lead role, but individuals as entrepreneurs getting into business and expanding what would otherwise be what is available for government to make more money in terms of revenues. And then the other bit is, of course, continuing with reviewing our education system to ensure that we are ready for the future. If we want to go to manufacturing and the jobs you're looking at the moment will be more of engineering, are we upskilling our people to ensure that we are there when the FDIs come in and want to set up shop in the country?
All right, thank you very much, Ashif Kassam, the Executive Chairman of RSM, as well as Elvis Ogeto, who's a partner at RSM as well. We'll do this again tomorrow when we're having a conversation still in the build-up to the budget 2018, as we look forward to seeing how the country can grow forward in terms of the economy. And that's the conversation we've been having on today's coverage of the budget 2018.
Budget analysis in association with RSM.
The county of Murang'a is looking at a serious food shortage in the coming months as the landslide crisis continues to worsen. Farmers say that even though they have crop in the fields, getting it out will be impossible because the earth keeps moving every day, making it unsafe to go into the farms. Zena Bondati reports.
The birds in the sky dance and sing, celebrating a new day, oblivious of the dangers that lie down below. This has been the story of Murang'a County for the last few weeks, a story of a people living in fear of nature, with the ground opening day by day, swallowing their homes.
Nisaidiwa ni watu, lakini vitu nyingi zako ilipotea nyingi iko na TV ilipotea, iko na nini ilipotea, mambo mingi hizo kukwambia, sababu mimi niko na wasiwasi, lakini usapewa wa kulala, lakini vitu fikiri mambo yaso, hata mimi tuko na kesho mzuri, lakini sikupenda. Naomba Mungu namwambia unisaidie sababu ukuniua.
The landslides in Murang'a County have disrupted the lives of the people living in this county because not only did they lose their homes and property, they also lost loved ones. But for the farmers in this county, it goes a step further because they are losing their livelihoods too.
Ile tegemeo lao la majani chai iliporomoka na sasa ikawa hata production imeenda chini sana, na hata kuchuna inakuwa shida kwa sababu imeenda kwa mitaro, ingine hata haifiki na ingine imeenda kwa wenyewe.
Tunaona hapo tena huko chini iko na mlima, hata wezi kupika. Unaona mimi niko na ng'ombe na nini na thara iko huko, tuwezi kutoa.
Kiangodho in Kangema sub-county is among the most affected areas in Murang'a County, with each of the 3,450 people living here having been impacted by the landslides. The daily earth movements have left them cut off because as the earth moves, so does the road. This road connects Kiangodho tea farmers to at least 10 tea buying centers, but in the last few weeks, this is what is left of the road. Part of it having moved into this farm, effectively cutting off the centers. In some areas, the gaping holes in the earth have yielded water, springs flowing where there was no water before, including on the roads. The local administration says that the county may have to join the list of those living on relief food because the landslides are taking away the people's ability to feed themselves.
Usalama wa chakula sasa itakuwa shida sana, na inastahili wasaidiwe kwa sababu hawatavuna kwa sababu zile chakula zingine zimekubwa na maji, kwa hivyo hawatavuna. Ingine imeenda na miporomoko, hawatavuna.
Looking at the way things have done, there will extremely be no harvest.
You expect to lose everything?
To lose everything. Because now, you know, the situation have not changed, because today you are going like this, tomorrow is like the other. So people here are actually living in suspense. Mungu akitusaidia alafu tungoje tuone kama hii inaisha wani kumomoka hii ya nini. Itamomoa manjani huko niweke huko juu.
As the county struggles to find a permanent solution for the affected communities, it is faced with the reality of possible conflicts over land boundaries in future, because not only are the landslides affecting people's lives and livelihoods, they are also changing the topography of Murang'a County. Zainab Wandati, NTV.
to what exactly happened, and so there can be some culpability and action taken on those who are to be found culpable. Now we come to a conversation about how to shine your light even against all odds. And today, this is just ahead of the International Day of Awareness on those people living with albinism. And that is the conversation we'll be having in studio right now. And I'm joined by two of my guests. And I'll begin with the CEO of the NCPW, that's Mohammed Gabo. Thank you for joining us. And before we come to Lydia, first of all, maybe just giving us an overview of what this day tomorrow is about.
Thank you so much. We are pleased to be here today. International Albinism Awareness Day is a UN day that marks for persons with albinism. The issue is to create awareness on their blight. There have been so much about persons with albinism, how they've been treated across the world. For example, in Africa, especially in Tanzania and other African countries, where they have been used for wrong purposes, like witchcrafts and all that. So this day is to create an awareness across the world so that other persons who do not have disability are able to appreciate their presence among us and support them.
Okay. Lydia, maybe you can tell us who you're also a board member of the same organization and you're a counselor. What is your story first and foremost in regards to living with albinism?
Okay, thank you so much. First and foremost, I wish to send my condolences to all the persons, all the families and friends of persons with albinism who lost their lives either by the killings and at the same time due to skin cancer. My sincere condolences to all the family members and friends, because there are many who never live to celebrate this day with us because of the killings, and of course that is due to human. So with me, as a person with albinism, I would say that we have a lot to celebrate as albinism fraternity. And first and foremost, I also wish to thank the UN for giving us this great day, an international day, so that we can be able to, as we create awareness, we are also able to shine our light to the world. We have a lot to celebrate in terms of where we are. It's not where we were like even 5 years ago, or even 10 years ago, and even 50 years ago. And we thank especially the government of Kenya that has really been of great support to ensure that we also have a space in this country, and we are also proud to be Kenyans. And I remember that in the past we used to struggle a lot in buying of the sunscreen lotion, which is quite expensive, because a bottle goes for almost 2,000 and plus. So you can imagine a whole year you have to buy every month a bottle of sunscreen, and especially when it's hot, at times you use 1.5 bottles. It was not manageable for many of us, but with the government stepping in and providing the sunscreen for persons with albinism, it has been a great achievement. Because for us, I always make fun saying that during my birthday, don't bring me a cake, but if you give me a bottle of sunscreen, you have added me an extra day to live. So for us, sunscreen is a matter of life and death. So we have a lot to celebrate, yeah.
Okay, and Bwana CEO, we have a number of cases, or a number of people who have the same kind of situation. What kind of legislation is in place to ensure that they enjoy their rights, and so that they're not treated as any less of a person than the rest of us are?
Thank you. First, we have an Act of Parliament 2003 that created the National Council for Persons with Disability, and within the Act, it supports programs that support persons with disabilities. I'll go straight to issues of persons with albinism, because I think that is the topic today. One of the things that the government has done is actually there's a full budget of 100 million Kenya shillings every year that comes from Treasury to support programs that assist persons with albinism. And one of the programs is the provision of sunscreen lotion that is applied to persons with albinism. And every year, I mean every month, they can pick these lotions at hospitals. This is level 5 and level 4 in every county. So currently we have about 3,150 persons with albinism who are registered with us. There could be more, up to 5,000, but that's what we were able to capture. So we do provide sunscreen lotion. The law accepts for that. Number 2, they belong to among the 5% of persons with disability who are given an affirmative action on employment. Number 3, they can retire at the age of 65 instead of 60. Number 4, we give them cancer screening programs. They can go to hospitals and we pay for them for that purpose. We give them lip balms, protective clothing, and one other issue is we create awareness, and we've been working very, very closely with the county governments and the county commissioners on issues of where persons with albinism rights have been violated, especially where they are murdered, they're killed by soccerers for purposes of, I don't know, whatever they want to use for them. So the law is very clear, and we're in contact with the county commissioners in every county and chiefs, and we know where persons with albinism live, and they have actually what we've been doing is create awareness to make sure that they know that they're in danger and they are supported. We also pay school fees for them, for whoever person with albinism, we pay school fees, and they can also go into groups where they can develop business programs up to 100,000 Kenya shillings. I know we may not have done all what we are saying, but basically for persons with albinisms, we've been able to achieve much of these programs for them. So these are in the Act and in the Kenyan constitutions, where persons with disability, which persons with albinism are among them, are catered for.
Okay, before we come back to Lydia, we want to cross over to KICC, where Deputy President William Ruto is now speaking, and he is at the launch of the National Land Use Policy. Let's cross over to KICC and listen in for just a bit.
And a sense of belonging. Kenya's freedom struggle was a crusade for a nation to have sovereignty over its land and for people to inhabit, live, and decide on it. For this reason, land has important cultural, political, social, and economic consequences. Because land is scarce, the fragility of our ecosystem is increased, food security threatened, and human settlement is often problematic. The ability to manage diverse, competing, and conflicting claims, harmonize priorities related to different uses while upholding livelihoods and promoting sustainability is critical for development. This calls for sound institutional and management frameworks. The National Land Use Policy that I have the honor to launch today is that necessary instrument. To adequately address the various interests involved in matters connected with land, This policy is necessarily a product of wide, comprehensive, patient, diligent, and inclusive deliberations and consultations. It is important that at this point to emphasize that consultation and participation are not mere formalities or meaningless rituals. Public consultation and participation enhances the quality of public decisions, taking them as close as possible to the ideal of democratic, participatory, transparent, and accountable governance. It is important for all voices to be heard and for decisions to reflect as many and as diverse of those voices as possible. On a matter such as land, it is vital that participation, consultation, and inclusion be undertaken diligently and exhaustively, bearing in mind the inalienable validity and legitimacy of all voices in their diversity. The land use system, to be inaugurated by sessional paper number 10 of 2017, is therefore a proactive engagement. It is intended to, and every effort must be made to commit to ensuring that it succeeds in addressing our biggest challenges. These include food insecurity, unplanned settlements, inefficient land practices, and environmental degradation. It must also enable us to effectively mitigate the impacts of climate change. Our legal and regulatory regime takes a robust approach to the land use and management practices. We have since adopting the new constitution and ensured adequate legislation to guide our practices. However, to achieve balanced economic development, it will take more than the legislative framework we have put in place. Rather, it will require a change of attitude and a change of approach. I'm talking here of the need for us to take a collective approach to realize gains in environmental conservation. The law requires that county governments develop spatial plans to inform the county integrated development plans. To do this, the county and national governments will have to rely on the national land use policy as an overarching framework for planning and optimization of our land resources.
Deputy President William Ruto there speaking at the launch of the land use policy. That's the national land use policy, which is the document which is going to be used by both national and county governments, and he's pointed out the same, especially in light of the county governments coming up with their special plans, which are meant to determine how the counties and their towns are set out and structured, even as more of them try to construct more and more of these structures. Now back to our conversation in studio. Lydia Mugore, what are he's spoken about, the CEO here has spoken about different issues in regards to the people who had targeted persons with albinism. Do you feel safe, for instance, as a Kenyan, just walking around the streets and the likes?
That's an interesting story, question, because, okay, despite the awareness that we have been creating, you can't miss a day or two when somebody will just, as you wake up and you're walking along the street, somebody will just say that is money. Actually, even as I was coming this morning, somebody just called me money, milioni. And it's not a nice feeling, but we are here to tell you we are your brothers and sisters, we are your parents, we are even your grandparents, your shoshos, because we belong. And I would say that actually nobody who applied to be born the way we were born or the way or where we were born. And with albinism, it's a congenital condition. It's not contagious. And if only we are given a chance to live like anybody else, we can be great people. And that's why we are telling people today that give us a chance to shine our light. So many of us, we are educated, we have skills, but at times the discrimination that we get out there is great. It's so discouraging. When you go knock in an office and you are told that maybe when we have people with the disabilities, when we can invite you to come and work with them. No, we are talking of inclusion. So give us a chance and we will show you that yes, we can make it. So for me to feel safe, I live one day at a time because I don't know whatever will happen, but I always hope and pray for the best.
Mr. Gabo, what can be done to ensure that they feel safe, especially considering that the kind of let me call it insecurity that they face is pretty much unique to them to some extent. It's not what everyone else experiences.
Actually, the government has done much. And if you look at the incidences of the past 1 year, I'm sure losing one life is in this country is actually something we should be speaking of. But I must commend the government that they've done well in terms of that. Mostly what affects them is discrimination, and that that trauma where people speak ill of them, give them different names and all that. So basically, how do we improve this? I think the Nyumba issue is a very important and dear to me. We've also asked for the county commissioners to do a mapping out of persons with albinism, where they live, and more security actually is given in that area. The chiefs have records and all that, not just for protection, but also for them to get support from the National Council. Basically, I believe they are more safer than they were, and Kenyan had I know there have been incidences. This year I didn't hear of any, and I'm proud. But there are other issues which we could discuss. But for their own security and the killings and being hijacked and all that, that has significantly reduced. So we just need to know where they live so that we're able to tell the chiefs, especially those who live along the borders of Tanzania, Korea and all that. So those are the areas of which actually we must map out and know where they live.
Okay. Lydia, we've talked about some of the challenges that you faced as we celebrate the International Albinism Awareness Day tomorrow. What are some of the things that you hope can be voiced and action can be taken on in terms of just trying to help the situation?
Okay, even as we celebrate the achievements, of which there are a lot, but at the same time, there is a lot that still has to be done. Yes, Mr. CEO is saying about the killings have not been reported, but teasing in our day-to-day life, it's not easy, because you see, the person who is mentioning whatever he is mentioning and going away. But when he calls me Zeru, calls me money, it remains in my heart, and it hurts. And at times, you see, like even when I go to report to the police, this person, even I don't know him, I just met him along the streets, I don't know him, who will be accountable for that? So what we are telling the public is, we are part of you, we belong. But some of the challenges that we can say and they need to be addressed is the issue of employment. Employment is a big hindrance to people with albinism and in persons with disability in general. because when you don't have an income, you become a beggar and you become a burden, both to yourself and even to the community. But when we are empowered, we have been empowered with education, because education is an equalizer. Actually, in our office, the Albinism Society of Kenya, we have so many CVs, very qualified people, but you see they don't have jobs. We have to keep on knocking here and there, begging for people to offer employment to persons with albinism and even persons with disability.
Bonasio, what has been done or is being done to ensure that there's as much as possible a fair platform in terms of competing for jobs, like she's saying, because that's a significant challenge, because it's an issue of bread and butter, and if they're being blocked on account of the way they are, what is being done to ensure that there's this kind of things, is that they can report and action can be taken?
Thank you. The law puts at 5% for persons with disability, but again, the law says progressively. You know, the law sometimes is changed. When you talk of progressively from what to what? You can move from 0 to 0.1, 0.2. So currently we're waiting for the new bill, which will specifically say 5% of every employed, including NTV here, must be persons with a disability. I think that will do us good. So we are asking Parliament, or whoever is concerned about the bill, to fast track that. Secondly, we hope through the government programs that this 5%, the MDS, ministries, departments, and agencies, we've been creating awareness among them. We've been talking to them to make sure that they're able to absorb persons with disability. Basically, let me tell Kenyans that they are the best workers. First of all, there are people who do not move around so much. Once they are seated in their workplace, they do very well. So I think the legislation that exists must make sure that persons with disabilities are employed. And in the rule is, for example, every board that the president appoints, usually we have persons with a disability. We make sure. Every employment that happens. For example, in the nomination process of MCS, and I'm sure that is also an employment, we make sure that at least 2 persons of either sex sit in the county assembly. Parliament has also tried. They've not done very well. We have a person with albinism, Dr. Maura, who represents persons with disability. We have Dr. Sankok. We have about 6 or 7 members of Parliament who have been nominated. But again, the government, we as a government must walk this talk to make sure that persons with disability are employed, at least 5% as the Constitution demands.
Lydia, in your closing remarks, what you've partly alluded to, you've said that you've called on people to remember that, you know, our sisters, our mothers, our aunties, our shoshos, like you said. What support do you feel that is needed for people living with albinism, in your closing remarks?
I would also ask the government, because that there were some people, there were some cases reported about the killings or attempted kidnappings that were reported, and at a certain point the case was thrown away. Please let us remember that even if it's one life, it means a lot. Please let's also have very tough laws to be able to protect us, because when people keep on being released and walking scot-free, it means that people will continue harassing us. So I think that one is something that should be taken care of. And the other one is that we need to have the structures that are there we need a lot of monitoring and evaluation to see whether they are working, because at times we might have laws in the, or whatever structures in paper, but they are not working. Practically, they are not working. Okay. But my parting shot is, we know that there are people who have really been so kind to us. Somebody somewhere said that people might forget what you tell them or you did to them, but they will never forget what you made them feel. Within our society, within our families, there's those people who have made us feel accepted and appreciated and loved. We thank you. Because it is through that we are able to move on. Because I remember there was a client who came and she narrated her story the way she was left under the guardianship of the grandmother. And when she attained the school-going age, she could not, the grandmother took her to school, and the person in charge of that school said that they could not accept this child because she would attract flies within the school because she was stinking. And that remained with that child forever. All through, she could try and bathe 3 times a day because she felt psychologically she was stinking. So what I'm saying is this: what you make somebody feel, either negatively or positively, it means a lot and it goes a long way.
Okay. So, thank you very much. Time is far much gone, but thank you very much for your insightful conversation, giving us your own experience, and Mr. CEO for giving us some of the policy issues and what is being done and has been done in regards to the people living with disabilities, with specific focus on people with albinism. I've been speaking to Lydia Mogore, who is a person living with albinism, as well as a director at the National Council of People with Disabilities, as well as the CEO of the same organization, Mohammed Gabo. Thank you for joining us. Let's have a news bulletin in the next few minutes.
This
It's just 2 days to the kickoff of the World Cup, and NTV is going to be bringing to you live for free 32 matches, so be sure to join us then. And right from the opening ceremony, we shall definitely be letting you in on this excitement. Now, begin with our news stories, and Ugandan soldiers are detaining 3 Kenyan security officers in what could be the latest controversy surrounding fishing rights in Lake Victoria. The officers were arrested and disarmed by the UPDF soldiers on Monday near Mageta and Hama Islands in Lake Victoria and taken to the neighboring country by boat. NTV's Oko Okusa joins us live with an update. Okusa, what more can you tell us from when we last spoke?
Yes, Dan, what I can tell you is that as we speak, there is a closed-door meeting happening inside that room over there, and it's being chaired by the Nyanza Regional Commissioner, that is Moffat Kangi. That meeting is also being attended by the Nyanza Regional Police Commandant, that is Leonard Katana, and of course the Nyanza Regional AP Commandant, that is Rashid Abdullahi. It is a meeting that has brought together all the security officials from this region, including the Siaya County Commandant for AP, that is Patrick Lumumba. It has been going on for close to an hour now. We expect them to come out any moment from now and address the anxious fishermen and residents who are gathered here. Remember, this is the first time the government's presence is being felt 19 hours after the 3 APs were captured yesterday by the suspected UPDF soldiers, that is Uganda People Defense Forces soldiers on Lake Victoria. This happened sometime at around 4 p.m. yesterday when a distress call was sent by some fishermen here at Nambo Beach that some soldiers, suspected Ugandan soldiers, had actually captured. There are some 5 boats belonging to Kenyan fishermen there. So when these officers on patrol responded to that distress call, then they were detained by the soldiers. And of course, we are getting reports that they were actually beaten up and stripped and their guns confiscated. In fact, we are also told that during the capture, there were some shots that were fired in the air by the Ugandan soldiers, by the suspected Ugandan soldiers. So that is what is happening now. Last week, we are also made to understand that some 7 fishermen, Kenyan fishermen, were also arrested, and then some 3 relatives went to secure their release, and those ones too were detained. So this brings the total number of Kenyans alleged to be detained on the other side of the border to 14, not really 14, but 17, including the 3 officers. We are yet to hear from the officials here on what action they are planning to take. Of course, we expect them to brief us after that meeting. They're also meeting inside there with the members or officials of the beach management unit here at Nambo. Remember, Kenyans here are accusing Ugandans of taking over at least 3 islands that they claim belong to Kenya. These are Siro, Wayasi, Hama, and of course the Sugulu on the Busia County side. At the same time, remember, Dan, that there has been controversy between Kenya and Uganda over the ownership of Migingo Island, which is in Migori County. That is here to be resolved. In 2012, there were efforts between the 2 countries to resolve those border issues, but that has not happened yet. There has been cases and cases of Ugandan soldiers arresting Kenyan fishermen on the lakes on claims that they have crossed the border, and that has really brought in a lot of animosity between the 2 countries. So we actually expect, we are hoping, everybody here else is hoping that this latest incident will instigate or trigger some conversation between the 2 countries and resolve these border issues before they get into some diplomatic row of some sorts. Done.
Thank you very much, Oko Okusa, coming to us from the county of Siaya, where he's been giving us an update on that situation between the Ugandan authorities as well as the Kenyan ones. Now, Health Cabinet Secretary, that's Cecily Kariuki, and her public service counterpart, Margaret Kobia, failed to appear before the National Assembly's Public Accounts Committee to explain why they did not use the IFMI system to pay out 1.9 billion shillings to various government departments. Planning PS Julius Muya and Gender PS Safina Kwekwe, who appeared in their stead, acknowledged that the money was spent but had not been budgeted for. Details of this expenditure are expected to be shared when the session resumes, as the 2 were given time to consolidate their responses.
The Auditor General gave a disclaimer opinion on the financial statements of the State Department for Planning. On one of the basis is variance between actual and budget figures for the financial year 2013-2014. According to the Auditor General, the Ministry for Devolution and Planning in 2013-2014 under vote head 103005300 Planning and Development Headquarters spent 1,964,426 and 798 shillings on transfers to other government units which had not been budgeted for.
We received a request from our colleague Dr. Muya to provide information to respond to questions that had been raised by this committee. Reason being that the questions were relating to a period in time when the funds in question were within the jurisdiction of the State Department of Planning.
The first letter you refer to of 21st August is actually a subsequent letter. But their latest response is the one of 12 February 2018. And in that response, they still seem to dispute it. So although your statement says that it has since been reconciled, it appears it hasn't.
The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission says it has narrowed down on individuals behind the theft of billions of shillings at the National Cereals and Produce Board and the Kenya Pipeline Company. EACC Chairman Eliud Wabukala said the commission will give a full report on the state of the investigations later in the week, and that the probe, which is being done with the help of the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, was at an advanced stage. He was speaking during the launch of the commission's strategic plan for the year 2018 to 2023.
Investigations are ongoing on many fronts, as the chairman has said, and of course it is not static that the statistics of the completed investigations, where we give the files or forward the files to the DPP for the next level of the process. Every week we have between 10 to 15 that we finalize and forward, sometimes after 2 weeks, but many a times every week we have something we give.
Staying with investigations, but on a different note, detectives investigating the wreckage of the FlySax plane that killed 8 passengers and 2 pilots on the 8th of June 2018 at the Elephant Peak in the Aberdare Forest have assembled 32 pieces of exhibits to be used in establishing the cause of the crash. The investigating team now suspects that the pilot, Barbara Wangeshi, may have planned to pass between 2 cliffs at the Aberdare Ranges, but her maneuvers were hampered by poor visibility due to foggy weather. NTV's Mel Miondo with the details.
The team of investigators led by DCI Head of Homicide Martin Nyaguto and the investigating team commander Tsuma Sydney converged at the office of the Njabini Deputy Commissioner before heading for the summit cliff at 9:30 a.m. Monday morning. The team was dispatched to investigate the exact cause of the Cessna aircraft FlySax plane crash on Tuesday, 8th June 2018 that killed all 10 occupants. The evidence collection at the crash site took 3.5 hours, with an additional 5 hours being taken on trekking uphill on the steep terrain with harsh weather.
The forensic officers and the homicide team will also proceed to Kitare, where this aircraft took off from Kitare, and then they will also do thorough investigations at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, where the aircraft was supposed to land.
Of the over 30 pieces of exhibits documented by the detectives on site were fuel samples, laptop hard disk and other parts of the plane to be used to establish the exact cause of the FlySax plane crash. According to investigating team commander Tsuma Sydney, it is suspected that the pilot, Barbara Wangeshi, may have planned to pass between 2 cliffs on the Aberdare Ranges but missed the target. This is in contrast to reports about miscommunication between the pilot and the control tower. It is said that Captain Barbara's route was changed mid-air from landing at Wilson Airport to JKIA, which she was not familiar with. The wreckage of the FlySax plane was found at Elephant Peak in the Aberdare Ranges 2 days after the plane went off radar. Mel Miendo, NTV.
Masai Girls School in Narok has been closed indefinitely after students walked out to protest an alleged case of sexual harassment at the school. Over 700 girls at the school staged a walkout in protest alleging sexual harassment by a male teacher. Narok North Sub-County Education Director Samuel Sankale says the school will remain closed as they investigate the claims. The incident is the latest case in a worrying trend across the schools in the country where students have reported to have been sexually assaulted by male teachers within learning institutions.
We are investigating a teacher who was trying to force a girl to love him or to have sexual intercourse with him. We were here yesterday, but we have not concluded. We wanted true facts. And the facts are the one we can give you. We can give you facts. But right now, I cannot speculate.
The governor of Kiambu County, Ferdinand Waitito, has threatened to cancel contracts awarded to construct a hospital block at the Lari Level 4 hospital. Waitito accuses the contractors of underperforming and inconveniencing the county government's plans. The contractors were awarded a tender to construct a 150-bed capacity ward. The project cost the county government 300 million Kenya shillings. The contract was awarded 3 years ago and the project has taken longer than it was scheduled to. The governor gave the contractors until December to complete the project, else he will revoke the contract.
Hatutaki tena kuona mtu contractor tunamlipa alafu yeye anaenda kufanya biashara zingine na pesa, anakaa miaka yote hapo akifanya revaluation nini ati nini. Sisi hatutaki story. Mtu akipewa kazi kama hafanyi, tunatafuta mwingine yule anaweza hiyo kazi anafanya.
To a neighboring county, and water shortage in Meru County might soon be a thing of the past after the county government commissioned the drilling, casing and equipping of solar-powered boreholes. While flagging off the drilling machines, Meru County Governor Kiraito Murungi said the 100 boreholes are expected to be functional and supplying water by December. The governor said Igembe region alone, which has had serious water shortage, will get 42, while 58 other boreholes will be distributed to other dry regions of the county. The community will form boreholes management committees that will oversee the maintenance. To sustain the water supply, the 100 boreholes will be connected to the households using solar energy. 600 million shillings has been set aside to drill and equip 500 solar-powered boreholes.
Hii mpango utaendelea Meru yote, lakini hasa pahali tumesema tutaweka pesa nyingi, pahali tutaweka maji mengi zaidi ya kule kwingine ni hapa Igembe, kwa sababu Igembe ndio mko na shida nyingi hiyo ya maji. Mbao imepimwa kila pahali mwaka huu, na si hiyo peke yake, kuna ingine tunafanya ito kwenye dams, tunafanya water pans, na hata hiyo mradi inakuja na mtaiona area hii kwa sababu umeanza.
The Senate has been challenged to create new laws that will define the roles of the deputy governor. Tharaka Nithi Governor Muthomi Njuki says the law as it is currently is ambiguous and states the role of the deputy governor as only to deputize a governor, and that is a situation that leads to numerous clashes between the two offices. He says lack of meaningful work leads to conflicts between the county heads and thus stifling development.
When you don't give your deputy governor work, it is recipe for disaster. Ukimweka pale na mjapatia kazi, wewe unamwambia saa hii aende kazi nyingine ya kufanya siasa ya kuchimba kaunti. Si ni ukweli? Ndio sababu mlisema tuwapatie kazi, na mimi nilitii nikapatia governor wetu kazi, deputy governor wetu kazi, na mimi naomba wale governors wengine Kenya hii ambao wanasumbua ma deputy governors wapatie kazi so that they can be busy tujenge taifa yetu yake.
Police in Limuru have arrested 3 people said to have been impersonating Kenya Revenue Authority officials. Traders told police that the suspects, identified as Moses Ochieng, Luke Kimutei and Irene Nyambura Maina, have been harassing them, demanding money and threatening arrests for those who don't give in to their demands. Now, Limuru Police Boss Eunice Githure says the suspects are being held at the Tigoni Police Station and will be charged in court once investigations are complete. Auditor General Edward Ouko is calling for the independence of internal auditors so as to boost the war on corruption. Ouko says the role of internal auditors in whistleblowing and pointing out malpractice could not be underestimated. Speaking in Mombasa during the 16th annual conference for the Institute of Internal Auditors Kenya, Ouko called for more funding and support to enhance the capacity of his office to cover all the 47 counties.
There are still a lot of challenges because my office is not in every county. And one of the things is to make sure that at least in the future I'm nearer to the counties, because the nearer I am, maybe it will be a preventative, it will be more preventative. But at the moment, with whatever little we have got, we've used it well.
Muslim faithful across the country have been urged to dedicate the last 10 days of Ramadan to pray for peace and unity in the country. Speaking during an iftar dinner in Tana River County, Chief Administrative Secretary for Devolution, Ambassador Hussein Dado, asked Muslims to spend time praying in the mosque. He also challenged religious leaders to use their freedom of speech to preach peace and unity in the country. Dado, who is the immediate former governor of Tana River County, was with Deputy President William Ruto during his coast tour over the weekend in Malindi, Mombasa and Kwale.
Sisi Waislamu, tafadhali katika hizi siku chache zimebaki, fanya msikiti rafiki yako uwe zaidi kwa msikiti, hasa wakati wa usiku. Ikiwezekana uswali tarawih na tahajjud. Vile vile muombee nchi yenu iwe salama. Tunaomba umoja wa nchi, tunaomba usalama wa nchi, kwa sababu tumepewa nafasi ya kuabudu bila kusumbuliwa na mtu yeyote. Kenya ni nchi ya pekee, hata nchi zingine za Kiislamu huwezi abudu kwa umakinifu.
Let's cross over to the county of Nakuru, where a 55-year-old man from Milima Mitatu village of Turi Ward in Molo, who went missing 2 weeks ago, has been found dead and his body floating in a river. His wife, Lucy Kiarie, says the deceased Samuel Kiarie left home for work on the 26th of May and never returned home. She suspects he may have been swept away by the swollen river that broke its banks following heavy rains. His body was found a kilometer from a bridge that was also destroyed by the floods. And still in Molo, and residents of Salgai Estate in Rongai constituency in the county of Nakuru are having problems accessing other regions after the connecting road was swept away by floods following heavy rains. Residents say that the road that has since been reduced to huge trenches is almost impassable by vehicle, leaving border borders as the only available means of transport. This has made traversing the region quite expensive. They say that the road has always been through rehabilitation, but the situation worsens during every rainy season. The road connects Elbagon area to Salga town. Now let's cross borders, and Zimbabwe's parliament has backed down from its demand for former President Robert Mugabe to answer questions related to diamond mining operations during his term in office. In what would have been his first public appearance since being ousted in a de facto military coup in November, Parliament had wanted to question Mugabe about his pronouncements that the state had been deprived of at least $15 billion in revenue by mining companies operating in the Eastern Marange gem fields. Now, Mugabe had twice failed to appear before the Mines Committee of Parliament and was given a final chance to do so on Monday, but the committee said in a statement it had now rescued the 94-year-old former leader after consultations with the Speaker. U.S. President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un shook hands and smiled as they started a historic summit on Tuesday, just months after they traded insults and threats of nuclear war. According to the two presidents, this is the beginning of the end of a nuclear standoff in the Korean Peninsula.
Some are calling it the Alpha Handshake after the two leaders greeted each other on the patio of the Capella Resort in Sentosa Island in Singapore against a backdrop of 6 American flags and 6 North Korean flags. The handshake is geared towards good tidings for the two countries. On Tuesday, President Kim told Trump that though there were obstacles in the relationship between the two countries, this day was a show of a great overcome, with President Trump saying this was a historic summit with North Korean leaders and it had gone better than anybody could have expected. The handshake is a preamble to signing a document following talks on ways to end a nuclear standoff on the Korean Peninsula. Kim stood silently alongside Trump as he spoke to media during a post-lunch stroll through the gardens of the Singapore hotel where the summit was held, but the North Korean leader had earlier described their meeting as a good prelude to peace.
Really very positive. I think better than anybody could have expected. Top of the line. Really good.
Trump told journalists the two were heading for a signing. What he did not give them, though, was the details on what would be signed. Should they succeed in making a diplomatic breakthrough, it could bring lasting change to the security landscape of Northeast Asia, like the visit of former U.S. President Richard Nixon to China in 1972 led to the transformation of China.
Time for sports, and Sean Cardavillis joins us on the other side of the studio. Sean.
Thank you very much. Just 2 days left to the World Cup. Don't forget, of course, it is a live and exclusive right here on NTV.